everyone, we're back. It's been a little while, but we're very happy to be back with you. I'm Chris, I play Coriakin and Clanlord, and with me today, as always, is...
Semi, I'm playing as Bingro.
Fantastic. Sorry for the delay, everyone. We had some technical issues and then some scheduling issues, but I have a new microphone, so hopefully I sound a little bit better than previous weeks, and yeah, let's get into it. Our topic today is endings, which are always the bane of every new composer. If you've come to any Bard concerts, you've heard us complain about how endings can be challenging. It's really, really true. Again, if you come up with a musical idea, great. And if you spend some time developing that idea into a whole piece, maybe after you listen to the last episode about developing ideas, that's also great. But what next? Originally, we were thinking about talking about transitions between sections and also endings in one podcast, but they're both such big topics, we decided they really should be separate. So today, we'll just do endings. But in order to do that, we need to talk a little bit about structure. The structure of a musical piece is sort of like the structure of a story. In a very general sense, a story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. In the beginning, you're introduced to the characters, the setting, and the problem or conflict that's at the heart of the story. In the middle part, we follow the characters as they interact and change, and follow the problem or conflict as it develops. And, of course, in the ending, the conflict is resolved and we say goodbye to the characters and setting. A musical piece is actually very much the same. In the beginning of the piece, we're introduced to the musical idea or ideas that the piece is built around. In the middle, the ideas can develop and change and interact, and at the end, we say goodbye to them. An ending's job is to wrap up what came before it into a satisfying conclusion, and that might explain why endings are so hard. What makes a conclusion satisfying? The answer, of course, is it depends. What will work really depends on both the nature of the music and what you're trying to accomplish with it. Oftentimes, you have to experiment to figure out what works. That said, today we're going to talk about some different types of endings that can work to give you a toolbox you can steal from when you're giving it a try yourself. Did you have anything you wanted to say before we go on?
Yes, I'd like just to emphasize that everybody struggles with endings. I think there's no bard or bard quest that doesn't get that feedback during their audition that they have to work on their endings. So I struggle with that myself. So I'm hoping to learn a lot today and just hear you talking about endings and how you approach them as a comparatively experienced composer. So I'm very much interested in what you have to say about those things, and maybe also some of my songs come up as well. Maybe just give me some critique on what I have done and what you might have done if you were me.
Sure, and of course, very much the opposite if you'd like as well. I chose endings that work for me, but that doesn't mean that they were... I guess the best choice doesn't necessarily apply because it's subjective, but, there are other options.
Sure.
All right, just two pieces of terminology that you'll need to know as we get into this. The first is Coda, C-O-D-A. It just is the name for an ending section. It's sometimes similar to what's happened before, and sometimes it could be something new. But if you're in a musical rehearsal and they say, take it from the coda, they're talking about starting from that last section. The other one, which is a whole topic in itself, but we'll get into very, very briefly, is what's called a cadence. A cadence is a progression of chords that has a feeling of momentum. Cadences that end on like the home chord, one, or the tonic, whatever word you want to use for it, tend to sound very final. They sound like a resting place. Cadences that end on other chords, often five or dominant, they usually don't feel final, and sometimes that's exactly what you want, although usually not at the end of a piece. All good?
All good. Let's
Fantastic. Go. All right, let's start with the ending that most people got into, because it's the ending where your piece just stops. I call it the sudden stop ending. It can be a little jarring, because you've got this piece rolling along, and all of a sudden, it just ends. I would say, again, it's very easy to do because you just keep writing until you're done and then you stop writing. This is usually not the best choice unless you're trying to accomplish a very specific effect. We don't play this all the time, but one of the real classics from the early 90s, back when barding first started, is West by one of the first bard masters, Blue. It's dedicated to a character, Sir West, who in game died. So his life was cut short, so the idea of a piece that ends suddenly works perfectly. Let's take a listen to it, unless there's anything you wanted to say about it first.
No, I'm fine. I'd like to hear the song.
All right, here we go. it just ends like that.
Yeah, I do love that because I'm a huge fan of painting with music. If you heard the last episode, or if you, Corey, remember the last episode when we recorded it and when we spoke about the things I did in my songs, I really love portraying the things I want to bring across with music, and I think that is having the context of West having died and life being cut short. Um, that really is something I love, and I didn't know, and actually that makes a lot of sense in this context.
Mm-hmm. I do remember everything you said, and what you're saying makes perfect sense to me as well. I really like this as well because the choice of where to end it is actually very, very clever. So if I can back up to the end, like this, the structure of this piece is AA. There's a section, and then it's repeated almost exactly the same, although with harmony. At the very end, the melody changes slightly, but take a listen to the end of the very first time through it. So it goes down, and then there's that nice little flourish before it comes back in before the melody
Yep.
starts again. And we've reached the point where that little flourish would be. So our ears almost fill it in, like we're expecting it. We want it to happen, and then it doesn't. This is one of those situations where a sudden ending like that can be super, super effective.
Yeah, but it is difficult to use and make things work. So I wouldn't use it all the time because it sometimes just gives the feeling that you just left your song and chose to not go any further, and then suddenly decided to play it at a concert.
Absolutely.
So
And
you have to have a good reason to do that, I think.
absolutely. Again, it's not necessarily a bad place to start, but it's bad if that's the only choice you can make. So why don't we talk about some other choices? The next one I want to talk about is what's called a tagged ending. When you add a tag to the end of a piece, you're repeating something. Usually it's the last line or phrase. I guess you could theoretically say that repeating a whole section is a tagged ending, although that's really more of having a coda section. When I talk about a tagged ending, I'm usually referring to a smaller section of it. So like a line, a phrase. The repetition causes the momentum of the piece to slow, which helps prepare for the ending. It's like you get this train going and you're slowing things down finally. I usually recommend repeating something iconic like the last line of a chorus because the audience tends to remember that part more strongly. And again, if you want people to leave humming your piece, you need to repeat the important parts several times. So I've got a couple of examples of things I've written. Let's go to one of my more recent ones, actually. Drifting Away. Oh, actually, before I get into it, Bingro, did you have anything you wanted to say about the tagged ending?
No, I have not. Maybe if we can talk about my example after that as well. So
Yep.
that would be great.
Sure. Okay.
Otherwise, let's get into Drifting Away.
Let's go with this one. So again, if you remember when I wrote The Healer's Lament, that suite of pieces, this is one of the movements, so take a listen. We won't play the whole thing because it's fairly long. We'll just play the intro and then skip to the last part. Here we go. So that was the first section. This is sort of an interlude. Listen to the second instance of this A section. Did you hear how I repeated the last phrase of that section several times? That was to make it seem
Yes.
more final, and that actually is exactly what I do at the end. I forgot that I did that at the beginning of the piece as well. Let's take a listen to the very ending. So the last part of the piece, as you can hear, is a fairly straight repetition of the very beginning. But the last part gets repeated 3 times, and as a result, it feels much more final than if I had just ended, like, I wonder if I can just do this manually. Oh. Obviously, I wasn't able to get it perfect there, but if I had only done it once, it just wouldn't quite feel final enough. It really felt like it needed to have a couple repetitions just to really sort of put a period at the end and be like, no, this is the end of the pattern. This is it.
Yeah, it looks great.
Mm-hmm. I quite like that. You'll notice that tagged end, like, one weird thing I did with this piece, I say weird, was the A section the first time is shorter. Second time it's actually longer with that repetition at the end as well. And then at the very end, we have that short phrase, just like the very first time, except with the tagged ending. Anyway, what can I say? I like repeating things a lot. Let's take a look at a different piece, though. Let's look at one of yours.
Yes, I'd like that. I brought Shadows Overwhelming. I do not the same as you did, but I repeat the first chords that I play at the beginning in a different context. So you get the same or similar feeling at the end of the piece that you get at the beginning. It's not exactly the same chords, but the idea is the same. And you, because it is directly connected to the part before, you get a feeling of triplets or shifting notes or shifting chords that you don't have at the beginning of the piece. Maybe we just have a listen, and you can just play it.
All right, then. Let's listen to the beginning, and then we'll skip to the ending. Here we go. So I think we'll actually skip to the ending because there's these 2 different sections. There's that first opening section with the slow chords, and then your main melody. So let's skip to maybe here. Yeah, so here's the ending. Or that section, I should say.
Yes. Did you hear what I meant by you get this triplet feeling? It is almost the same, but it has a different feel to it because it's directly connected to the part that's been playing earlier, which is in tempo 90, and then we switch to 60 for the real ending.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a very clever use of tempo changes to change the feel of the piece. And it also, again, slows things down quite a bit, which really helps to set up that feeling of, oh yeah, we're about done now. Cool. Awesome. I like it. So tagging can be a great way to do it, but there are other options as well. let's look at... I really liked how at the end of your last piece you had this one little note. Can I play it one more time? Here we go.
Yeah, sure.
Oftentimes at the end of the piece, you'll get some really big chord, some big ta-da moment. And there's probably a technical name for this, but I really can't think of it off the top of my head, so I'm just calling it a TaDa ending, where you end with a big full chord, or a few chords, that provides a very definitive, this is it moment. Almost always, you'll end with a big one chord, the tonic, the home key chord. Usually, sometimes you can have like a 5 or 5/7 first for a 5/1 progression, a cadence. Again, if you're like, I don't understand these terms, don't worry about it. Other progressions can be used that don't end on some like 4/1, but they will feel less final. Again, maybe that's what you want, just have to be careful with it. A variation is to add a single lower high note at the end, either after the big ta-da moment or instead of it, and that can also help provide a sense of definitive ending. So let's actually start with a piece I wrote a while ago. Rivalry is this piece that I wrote for Zappel back in the day, talking about how sad I was that he wasn't writing anymore and how I wanted him to do it again. Well, not exactly, but I'm very, very glad that he is again. Anyway, for those who haven't heard it much, it's very long. It's basically attempting to write a pop tune. So take a listen to it, and then I'll play for you just the ending. It'll be pretty obvious, I hope. Here we go. So this is the verse. Often in pop tunes, you wouldn't end on the verse, so the chorus is the important part when you're thinking about an ending. So this is the important part right here. So then we go back into the verse, but take a listen to the very, very last chorus. So if you're paying attention, hopefully you can hear I added in a whole bunch of higher notes to those final chords. As opposed to... Yeah. Bingro, what do you think?
I think it's one of your obvious TaDa endings, but I like it very much. It works in itself, and also has some change to it. So it is distinguishable from the in between section endings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with this piece, I kept the melody the same even all the way up until the end. So I figured I really wanted to change the accompaniment to make the ending more obvious. Another piece that's got a nice big ta-da ending, speaking of Zappel, is Spring Showers. So let me see if I can get that one up and show it to you. This is, of course, the piece that starts like this. And then this is the actual A section here. So hopefully you've all heard this enough. I mean, I play it a million times because I love it so much. Let's take a listen just to the ending then and see if we can identify this big ta-da ending. Here we go. one.
Almost the same that what I did.
I know, I love that. There's like the two big chords and then the... No, you know what? Let's just have that one little nice note at the end. Okay, I have to hear that again. I love it so much. Here we go. See, it's so
Great.
satisfying when you have these like really like an ending can be so satisfying. It can be so great.
Yes, and in this case, it is you're satisfied because you end on the home chord, and then you get more satisfaction.
I do. I absolutely do. All right. Let's take a look at the next one, which I'm calling the finish the pattern ending. It's not a great name, but I don't have a better one. Basically, if such as in Spring Showers, there's this repeating pattern in the accompaniment. If your piece has a repeated pattern in the accompaniment, you can sometimes get a satisfying ending by just finishing the last instance of the pattern. Often, you can use a TaDa chord or something at the end to make the pattern feel more final, or even just changing the last few notes can also work. Do you mind if we look at one of your pieces to explain this one?
Happy to.
All right, let's take a look at In the Flow. I don't know if this is the first piece of yours I ever heard, but pretty close to it.
Certainly not, because I think it is a Bard audition, full Bard audition song.
Yeah.
And you were present at my Quest audition as well.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's listen to it. So this is establishing the pattern that continues throughout the whole piece. It's interesting how your pattern actually changes here during the second phrase of your melody. But then for the ending, you'll go back to the beginning. That's such a fun little piece. I really, really like it.
I do too. As you said, it's one of my earlier works. And actually, this time, I had the ending in mind way before I finished the middle part, so the chorus verse structure. Mainly right after I came up with the idea, which I established, as you said, in the first few seconds of the piece. So that was already a point where I said I would like to end it as it ends now.
Mm-hmm. And it works super effectively. Endings don't need to be complicated, elaborate things. Sometimes the simplest option can be the best option, and in this case, it works really, really well. I like that. Let's take a look at one more for this finishing the pattern business. Oh, you know what? Let's listen
One
to...
of my favorites?
I was actually going to listen to a Rakshasa piece, if you're all right with that.
Yes, that was my favorite as well.
I'm glad we're on the same page here. All right, Harvest Moon. For anyone who hasn't heard this piece, it's possibly my favorite Rakshasa piece. I'm glad to hear it's yours as well. Let's take a listen to it and see where we go. Oh, sorry, what were we going to say?
No, that was it. I was rooting for Harvest Moon, which I like very much. I wouldn't say it's my favorite Rakshasa song, but it's very high up on the list.
Sounds good. All right, well, let's take a listen. Again, because it's fairly long, we'll listen to the beginning and then skip to the ending. All right, here we go. So I'm going to stop it just there for now. I love this piece so much. So what's interesting about this piece is that after setting up that section, it's repeated, and then Rakshasa goes onto this contrasting section with this texture instead. Oftentimes, if you repeat the same pattern behind a piece the entire way through, it can overstay its welcome after a while. But in this case, by changing it up, when the pattern finally comes back at the end, it's very, very effective. And let's listen to the ending then.
It's so catchy.
It is, and it does such a great job of establishing an atmosphere, of establishing a mood, and keeping you there the whole time. And at least for me, keeping me engaged the whole time. And the ending, it has that one little tiny extra note at the end, just like to tie a little tiny bow on the end of it. But yeah, very, very well done. I like that a lot. Another ending you can use, which some people consider a cheat, is the fade out. Especially if you have a repeating pattern and you don't want to end it definitively, you can just keep repeating the pattern and reduce the dynamic level so that it's silent by the time your piece technically ends. This can give a sense that a piece is actually continuing. You're just moving away from it or something. You can actually combine it with a fade-in intro for a sort of effect of drifting into a piece and then sort of drifting away. It can be kind of magical if done well, or super cheesy if done poorly. This is basically just an ending without an ending. It allows you to conclude a piece without having to change the momentum or actually change anything else except the dynamic level. I've used this in a couple of times, probably most notably with Praise Midnight recently. That's this one. Did you have anything you wanted to say about it before we play?
Yeah, I do feel the cheat part you mentioned, because it is kind of the sudden stop ending with a bit more being done. But this also means it has to have good reasoning why you use it. It would sound boring if you just use it all the time and not have a good reason to do so.
That's a good point. I have used it a few times, but usually only when I feel like it's the exact right thing to do. Like Bingro said, you can use it all the time, but it's not always the best choice. All right, let's listen to Praise Midnight, and you can hear how it sounds. Here's the intro. So actually, rather than playing the whole thing, let's skip ahead to the last A section, which I believe I've doubled at the octave to make it sound bigger. Anyway, here we go. So I changed the chord slightly. I don't know if you can hear it if you're listening super closely, but you can hear that the final chord was there. Especially in Clanlord, where your lowest volume can still be heard by some people, it is nice to at least have a final note, although not strictly necessary. But having that sense of drifting away can be pretty cool, I think.
Mm-hmm. And if I may, I would just take over and suggest to listen to The Old Man's Tale by me.
Yeah, let's do it.
Because that's actually what I did. Maybe some words before we start. The Old Man's Tale is also a very early song. The beginning and the end resemble a heartbeat. So the fade out at the ending is meant to show that the heartbeat is going on and on and on and on, and it doesn't stop, just as the song does. And I try to do that with the fade out ending.
All right, awesome. Let's take a listen to it. Sorry, just in the interest of time, let's skip ahead to the last section, if you don't mind. Here we go. Oh yeah, I can hear that low note, the heartbeat.
Yeah, that's the heartbeat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it works very effectively there as well, especially with the image that you're painting with the heartbeat.
Yes, and the section in between which we started to listen to and cut off, that's actually the tale that's told by the old man, and we hear it's his heartbeat at the end, beginning and at the end.
Okay. Well, I feel a little sad that I cut it off then, but
No worries.
we're running out of time, I'm afraid. Now, you actually suggested this next ending type, which you called the flyaway ending?
Yes, which is actually a name I made up. It's an ending that I used, and I don't have any other name, any professional name for it. So I just named it Flyaway Ending. And it is an ending in which you finish a phrase or a song with an upward sequence of notes. So oftentimes it's an arpeggiated chord. Arpeggios are a chord played not all at once, but after each other.
I see what you're saying. It's sort of like the TaDa ending where there's like a big flourish at the end, but it's very common and it is worth pointing out on its own.
Yeah, and I think you'll hear what I mean when we play our examples.
Yep. Arpeggios can be kind of fun because they have this feeling of movement, but they actually sort of slow things down harmonically. So it's a way of filling up the space in the bar without making the piece feel like it's continuing. Why don't we listen to Love and Peace and True Rules? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Also, it might be an ending which is more fitting for a song that is not working with block chords all the time. So it might be awkward if you have block chords all the time and then you end with a flyaway ending, or the other way around. If you have arpeggios all through your song, and then all of a sudden you have a big TaDa ending and da da da, that might sound difficult and not expected and such at a wrong place. So that is maybe the TaDa ending for arpeggio songs, if that makes sense.
It does, actually. All right. Sorry, now that you got me thinking about a piece I wrote a long time ago, which uses this kind of ending, The Last Kiss Goodbye. I don't know if I've played that in a long time. I'll show it to you sometime. All right, let's listen to a piece of yours, Love and Peace and True Rules at Your Wedding. So you're using this initial part to establish the pattern, and then
By the way, this part is the peace part
Okay.
of the title.
So first was love, then was peace, and then was truels. I gotcha.
It's peace, love, peace, truels. I think peace again.
Okay.
They are the truels.
Mm-hmm.
And the love again.
Fantastic. I really do appreciate the word painting you're doing here. That's great. Oh, but here's the ending. What a lovely arpeggio at the end. Yeah, that works really well. I like that.
Yes, and maybe it's a bit like it has something with the finish the pattern ending and the fly away ending added to it after that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We just talked about that.
Mm-hmm. And we'll talk about the slowdown a little bit later, but that's quite good. Let's use one more example, and I'd love to go way back in time to The Last Truth by Tonela, if you're okay with that.
Oh, great.
Mm-hmm. If you've been around bards at any point in the last 20 years, you've probably heard this piece. So that was a whole intro. Now we're actually to the main part of the piece. And then the melody will actually repeat. Just in the interest of time, I'm going to skip ahead to the ending, and we'll go to where that A section comes back. So that's almost like a TaDa or a Coda, and then that final part at the end. Oh, what a great way to end that masterpiece.
Yes,
It
is. It is.
That was one of the longest pieces I remember back from when I was first getting started with barding in, oh my gosh, 1998, something like that. And just, it really made me imagine, it made me think about what scale of piece I could write. It didn't have to be these short little things I was writing. I could write something amazing. But yeah, that ending, what a lovely ending. Actually, let's skip ahead to the next kind of ending, which is something that was actually featured in the last two as well, where you actually slow down. I just call it a slowdown ending. There's probably a proper name for it, retardando, rallentando, whatever. Anyway, the point is that in the last phrase, or few phrases, or even just the last few notes, the tempo slows down as the piece reaches its conclusion. The slowing tempo, it causes the momentum of the piece to slow, which helps prepare the ending. Oftentimes, this will be combined with a tagged ending or building up to a TaDa, like just as you heard. The slowed tempo really emphasizes the effect of the other ending choice. Sometimes it can be just a little bit of a slowdown, like 10 to 20%, which is what happens in Home. But you can also do like a huge, huge slowdown to like half the original tempo or even less. And that gets the feeling of the piece just like really, really slowing down to a stop. And I love using this. So, chasing lorikeet? I don't know. What do you think?
Let's chase lorikeet.
All right. So for this one, I established the pattern at the beginning, and I'll probably skip it, head to the ending at the end. All right. Here we go. is all intro, and here's the main theme. And this is the B section. I'll actually skip ahead to the ending because it's not necessarily perfectly related to the ending. So here is the finale of the piece. I think we slow down to a big chord, and then... So this is the last time the A section comes back. Well, there's the intro first. Interlude.
I really like the effect of that because it's a very fast-paced song, almost all the time, and then just bring it to a halt before the end.
Yeah.
Prepares everybody that now there's going to be the ending.
Mm-hmm. That was actually quite a challenging ending to write because, like you said, I had created this sense of momentum. It was a fast-moving piece. That pattern did not really want to end, so I had to figure out how can I get away from it in a way that makes sense. And slowing down and then switching to chords and then slowing down even more, it ended up working. But again, that was sometimes there's one ending that really, really works well and it's just very obvious. But a lot of times it can be very challenging to choose something that works well, and this was one of those times when I had to try lots of different things before I found something that actually worked. But I'm happy with it. I'm really happy with it.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's a great song and it's a cool ending. And if you say it's been a piece of work, that makes it even more great to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Greater to hear.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I'm proud of that one. Actually, speaking of ones that I'm proud of, let's go back to one of the first pieces I wrote after I came back to Clanlord in 2019, Home. This is, I mean, I got a master's degree in composition, so I'm like, I have to write something incredible, something awesome. And I don't know, I was just so happy to come back and find Clanlord was still around. I wanted to give something to the community, and this is what I did. So let's take a listen to it, and then, again, it's fairly long, so we'll just do the beginning and end. Here we go. So this is still all intro section. And here's when we get to the main melody. And then we get to the first episode. That'll make sense if you've done some music theory and you know what a rondo is, but don't worry about it too much. All right, let's skip ahead to the ending, unless there's anything you wanted to say.
No, I just love the song, and I would. It's not played often enough.
That's true.
Should play it more often.
All right, let's skip to the ending then. Here we go. Speaking of tagged endings, this is actually one of those fake endings I love, because this part is tagged, it's repeated, but it's not really the ending. And for anyone who's really paying attention, it's not the ending because it's in the wrong key. There we go. Oh, I love that one so much.
Yeah, it's a cool piece, and it's the beginning of your fake ending career.
It really is. It really is. Oh man. Oh jeez. What was I gonna say? I could probably spend an hour just trying to explain all the things I put into this piece. This was really something I put everything I could into, and you'll notice because it has 4 different endings in it. It has 2 different flyaway endings, like you said. It's got the fake ending, and it's got the tagged ending, plus of course the slowdown, the one we're actually talking about. Oh man, I love this too much. I could probably spend all day talking about it, but let's move on.
We should do this in an extra episode, maybe.
Oh, I'd love that. Just like really dive deep into it because there's so much going on in that one. So one thing that happened in Home is there's this whole ending section, and of course, pop quiz. If you remember the name for that from the very beginning of the episode, that was Coda. A coda is the name generally used for an ending section, as opposed to like just an ending. That's the end of something. It's like a chord or like the little flourish, the flyaway at the end. Often, a coda is similar to something that came before, but not always. Repeating the intro of the piece as a coda can be very effective, as you've heard several times already today. Introducing a totally new musical idea can provide a sense of confusion, like you're going to a new section before revealing that it's a fake out and it's leading to the actual ending. If you've heard Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, the first movement, da 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 da, that ending has actually one of those fake out coda endings that's not presented earlier in the piece, I believe. I'll have to double check that. But anyway, this is the place where you're combining the other ending ideas together to make a whole mishmashed Frankenstein's monster. Do you like?
Yeah, that one is actually a great example to a point I wanted to make as well. Usually you don't have, or you might have already heard, you don't have one kind of an ending for your song. Oftentimes you mix different endings together and create its own form, which is now a mixture of different things you can do at the end.
Mm-hmm. And again, this is fairly complicated. If you're just starting out, don't worry about doing this too much. But once you know what you're doing, combining different ending types together can make something really, really cool. Like, I don't want to brag, but I'm really, really happy with that ending from Home. Okay, let's start with one piece of mine and then maybe yours. So this is Hunt with Friends, which is relatively recent. So I have this intro that I repeat twice. And then we get into the actual accompaniment pattern. This one's kind of fun because I put the melody at the bottom as opposed to at the top. Melody's at the top again there. Anyway, so for the ending, what I do is for the ending, I believe I just repeat the intro, but let's take a step back and see what happens. So I'm actually going backwards. I repeat the second part of the intro first, and then the first part of the intro last. And then there's a big old TaDa chord at the end. This is one of those pieces where the main theme came relatively quickly, but the intro and the ending were very tricky to work out. I'm still not sure I'm 100% satisfied with them, but I couldn't think of a better option. I don't know. What do you think?
I hear what you say, and yeah, at the end you have at some point you have to settle down to for one thing or the other. I think it works. It's fine, but it's not the greatest thing to do, maybe. But I'd have to put more time into it, and maybe sometime I can come up with another ending and present it to you, and you can say if that's better or it's worse. Probably it's worse. But yeah, that might be fun anyway, to give someone to give each other a song and have them write a new ending to it.
Oh, actually, yeah, that could be interesting. I hadn't thought of that. For now, though, I do need to write something new. I can't go back and fiddle with endings. I like to say that perfect is the opposite of done, and in this case, I just needed to be done with the piece.
Sure.
Let's listen to one of yours. Oh, actually, can we do For Those Who Have Departed Forever?
Yes, yeah, of course.
All right. Let's take a listen. I love the way that your intro here leaves so much space. It's very, very effective.
Yeah, it is. It is for Xenos.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted it to give a sense of loneliness.
So after that A section, that was a fantastic transition right there. I don't want to jump in, but getting out of that more intense section, really, really nicely done.
Thanks. That's one of the songs I'm really proud of. I really like this one. It's completely different to what I've written before, and so I'm really glad it turned out that well.
You should be. You should be very proud of it. It's very, very nicely done, both on an emotional level and also on a technical level. It's very powerful. I'm really glad I get a chance to hear this piece.
Thanks a lot.
I love the way that your ending actually almost subverts the idea of a TaDa ending. There's this repeated part at the end, which is not quite tagged. Let's see if I can start right here. That last chord, we're expecting that last note from the melody to be there, but it's not. So I think you've actually found one of those instances where the "it just stops" ending is really, really effective here, which, of course, for a piece that's about loss, it works really well. Yeah, I think that,
I really wanted this ending to be abrupt. I hope that's the correct
that
English
is
word for it.
exactly the correct word, yes.
And I didn't want it to be a nice ending, so I did use actually a sus2 chord.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of it, the notes that are played in this last chord are a D at the bottom, then E, A, and D again.
Mm-hmm.
In this, so this actually writes with the notes.
Oh, I see. You're actually using the let DE8. I got you.
Yeah, and I like the idea, and it fit together. So
Mhm.
it was the idea of having an abrupt ending, a sudden stop to the song,
Mhm.
which fit the theme, and then being able to have it that way, and also writing with the notes, which I love to do, but it's usually is not that easy because it has to work out. It does have to sound nice, and it does have to fit. You have to find words with the notes, so that's quite complicated. And in this instance, it all came together and worked out quite nicely.
Yeah. One thing you didn't mention, which I think is actually really powerful, is the fact that the melody should resolve down to the F. Let's see if I can just do this. That seems like that should be the last note of it because it's what came before. The fact that that melody
Yes.
note is missing, it does help to emphasize the sense of loss, the sense of something unfinished.
Yes, and when we came to that point early in the piece, where we actually got to the F, it started off the whole middle section with the block chords and so on. So it at that point it started off on a higher pace. It started off a higher pace, and now we have the complete contrast to that. We get to the ending.
Yeah, and again, for those of you who are not bards at all, you might think, do they really put this much thought into just a few notes? And the answer is yes. Sometimes this is exactly what it's like. And
It's not always like that, but
yeah.
sometimes it is.
And especially for the pieces that mean a lot to you, you can
Yes.
really spend time trying to figure out ways to add meaning to things. And sometimes it's obvious to people, and sometimes it's not obvious. But when you put that amount of care into something, it can really matter. All right, I think we have time for maybe one more example. Is there any piece that you'd like to listen to the ending of?
Oh, I love the boat to Piston.
All right, let's listen to that one. A complete change of style.
Yes.
On the boat to Peaston. Here we go. So, for everyone who doesn't know, this is my attempt to make a sort of like rock style song. Very, very heavily influenced by Round and Round by Rat, R-A-T-T. So, it's this one. Piece was kind of interesting because it felt like it needed a super, super long intro.
Mm-hmm.
We only get to the melody, well, now. So what's interesting is actually the melody as it is. If I were just to end it there, it actually sounds fine. You can just, like, the way I wrote it has a very definitive ending for the chorus. So I was thinking, okay, if this already feels final, do I just end it the way it is everywhere else? And I thought, no, I got to change it up somehow. So what I did is actually tagged not the ending, but the phrase before it. So also, just as an aside, I'm super proud of the guitar solo. I don't play guitar at all, and that was kind of fun.
It's cool.
Yeah. Anyway, so here is the last chorus. So here, that's extended. And so again, combining different endings, we had that big sort of TaDa, not quite ending. Right here. Big ones. And then we finish the pattern, and then at the end, we've got that last final note and little drum thing. So again, combining like 4 endings.
Yeah, but that keeps things interesting.
Mm-hmm. And especially for like...
Can
Oh, so go ahead.
you can combine them, the endings in different ways, and like that you don't have your standard ending you always come back to.
Yeah, actually, that's a really good point. I guess we can use that as a sort of jumping point into more general stuff. As a composer, you find after a while that you run into the same problems over and over again. How do I solve this, or how do I end this particular piece? How do I transition out of this texture? And a lot of times, if you aren't paying attention, you'll find that you solve these problems the same way, which sort of leads you to your own style, but also can make you sound formulaic. It can be a little boring or repetitive. So finding new ways to solve these problems can be really, really important.
That's why I was really looking forward to this episode, because endings is not my strongest skill, and I'm glad we did talk about those. And maybe I can combine more stuff like you did, and have more interesting endings in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have lots of great stuff. I mean, especially that last one we talked about. And just as a quick aside, there are always going to be endings that don't fit into any of these categories. Like, the idea behind this is not to tell you the only way to do things. Music is super subjective. It comes down to what sounds good. If you come up with something neat, use it. If it doesn't fit into these categories, we can always add a new one. So just to wrap this up, here's the quick toolbox of things to try if you're stuck. Step 1, just add a big TaDa chord at the end of the last section. It might work. It might not. Perhaps repeat the chorus or the main section and then add a TaDa chord. If you have the part room, if you're not running out of character limit for Clanlord, you could consider making the last chorus sound different. Like, I love doubling the melody at a different octave, so that it just makes it sound fuller. On the other hand, you could do, especially for a piece like For Those Who've Departed Forever, you can repeat something with a sparser texture, with less going on. That can also be effective as well. The only thing is just you have to be careful. If you have too much repetition, it can sound boring. That piece I have, Rivalry, I keep thinking I'll change it so that I only repeat the last line, not repeat the whole chorus. Just because, again, too much repetition can be a bad thing. Another option, if your piece has a nice intro section, you could repeat that as a coda. You could use the intro as the outro as well. If none of those work, and your piece has an accompaniment with a repeating pattern, if that pattern ends in a definitive way, you could try the end the pattern ending. If the pattern doesn't end it in a definitive way, you could try altering the end so that it lands somewhere, or end with one of those arpeggios, the flyaway that Bingro was talking about. That was a lot of words all at once, but hopefully it was clear. Anyway, whichever one you try, you could always consider adding a slowdown to the ending as well. All right, just as a last thing, I just wanted to take a moment to defend myself. Why do I like fake endings so much? People always call me on this. Oh, man. What can I say? It's just, like, these are the pauses in my pieces just before the true endings. And yes, I use them all the time, but in my mind, they're not fake endings. They're obviously not the ending because they don't end on the home chord. They should give this sense of something that's unresolved, that something needs to be finished. And for some reason, people always think that, no, it's just me being a jerk. I mean, maybe I am a jerk, but it's fine. But anyway, the point is that there's this little pause where the music does stop, the momentum slows down, but it shouldn't be satisfyingly final. At least it's not to me. The whole point here is I'm trying to create a sense of anticipation. I'm trying to not give you what you want, so that when I finally do, it sounds better. It feels better. It's this thing that happens all the time in music, where you're creating tension in order to resolve it. Imagine it's like stretching a rubber band. You can stretch it and it'll go, but it won't be happy until you finally get it back to its position, at which point it sort of relaxes. Same thing with music. If you're creating tension, it feels like something's not quite right until finally it feels really good to go back to where it is. I really like that effect. Maybe I like it too much. Maybe I overuse it, but it is one of my favorite things to do, so I'm not planning to stop anytime soon.
would be bad if you would, because I think it's something to laugh about, and if you have the next fake ending ready, I'm happy to hear it and clap early.
I do always enjoy
like everyone does,
laughing at people who clap too early. Yes. No, I don't. I'm not that mean most of the time. All right. Well, that's, I think, a good intro to endings. We've been talking for, oh, wow, almost an hour and a half. We'll have to cut it down. But I think we covered some really good information. I hope it'll be useful to everyone.
Hope so too. It was definitely useful for me. I'm glad we did talk about endings, and maybe I can use this in my music in the future. and maybe you hear what I'm using after you heard this episode.
Awesome. I'll look forward to it. All right, everyone, thank you so much for listening. Once again, I'm Chris, or Coriakin.
And I'm Bingro. Thanks a lot for listening.
Awesome. Have a good day. Bye for now. All right, let's listen to a piece of yours, Love and Peace and Truels at your wending. Wending? Oh my gosh.
Wending.
All right, let's listen to a piece of you. Oh my gosh, I'm laughing.
Truels at your wending.
Oh my gosh, I'm sweating. Let me take off my sweater.